So our first guest speaker is our member called Claire. Claire, are you on? I can see you. Oh, fabulous. She's unmuting as we speak. So Claire has got vestibular vertigo. Is that right, Claire?
That's it, yes.
Fabulous. So whenever you're ready, Claire, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, yeah, I wish I'd discovered this support group when I first encountered my problem, but my story will no doubt be familiar to a lot of you. After a medical procedure, I developed a severe case of vestibular vertigo and became suddenly extremely confused, extremely anxious. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I can remember going to the Vaughan Morn Library in the Strand and going to a PowerPoint presentation and coming out of there and just veering into the coffee cups and knocking them all. So I was realizing I'd have to get home, finding it very difficult to orientate myself back to Waterloo Station. And then when I got to the station, all the crisscrossing passengers and all the screens all flashing, I suddenly found that I couldn't move my left leg. And that happened to me a few times in the early stages where I just went into that severe panic response, you know, fight, flight, freeze response. And it took a while each time to get the use of that left leg back again. So I suppose the first thing that I experienced was shock and confusion and just not understanding at all what was happening to me. And my symptoms got noticeably worse after an Epley's manoeuvre, which went a bit wrong for various reasons. And I just found myself in a state of, I suppose, severe anxiety. I can remember as well that it was very difficult to sleep because every time I fell asleep, I felt that the bed was sort of tipping me out. And so I would go to sleep and then wake up screaming a few minutes later. So that was pretty tough going on my poor husband. The shock and the panic, I remember, also the grief. The grief for my sort of lost life. I had recently retired from a life in teaching, school teaching, and I'd started a PhD and I was really excited about it. And suddenly I couldn't read. Not that I couldn't physically read, but the eye tracking across the page meant that my brain couldn't do its usual balance work. So I would get up from trying to read and I'd have this intense feeling of doom would descend upon me. I remember that, which must have been cortisol sort of flooding the system. So I couldn't carry on with the PhD, and this was an enormous sense of grief about this way I tried to reinvent myself, having retired from school teaching. So there was all the attendant feelings that come with grief, a lot of anger at myself, anger at one of the doctors who'd actually, done this Epley's manoeuvre without my permission and then sent me off to get on a tube train and various things that made it much worse. And there were also feelings of exasperation, incomprehension, and isolation, because kind as those people who were near to me were, they couldn't understand what I was going through, and I couldn't understand why I was suddenly such a mess, you know, that I would be bursting into tears all the time. There were three things that really helped me at this time. And the first was being really listened to. I was referred to Dr. Raglan at St. George's Hospital. And she just really listened in this unbelievably attentive way. And this was really extraordinary to me, because I guess I suddenly realized that what I was describing was a thing, you know, that it was a recognized medical condition. And that was reinforced by the neurophysio I was then put in touch with, and I had to, do a questionnaire, which I'm sure a lot of you have done, and found that I was ticking all the boxes. And again, that sort of reinforced my sense that other people have been here, that I'm not just sort of completely losing my mind. So that was really, really helpful. And then also some medics saying to me, when they say that you have anxiety, that's actually a medical definition, that when you have this severe type of balance disorder, it triggers the amygdala in such a way that you get this panic response, and it's recognized. And that was sort of also very helpful to hear that. So that was the first thing, that the being listened to. I think the second thing was Wimbledon Common. A neurologist said to me, just walk on uneven ground, to stimulate the vestibular system. And indeed, walking was one time when I could feel I knew where I was in space. So the action of walking for me was very, very helpful. And being under trees was very, very healing. There's a lot of evidence now that being in nature has in itself a healing property. And certainly for me, being in green spaces was very, very helpful. So that was the second thing. And then third thing was mindfulness. When I started a program of vestibular rehabilitation, I went at the exercises with a kind of fiery determination. I'm going to get the better of this. So, I was doing those exercises for 15 minutes, 4 or 5 times a day. I'm going to get back to my life. And of course, it was way too soon. I was still in the acute phase of the problem, when what I needed to do was to exercise the soothe system, rather than constantly re-triggering the fight, flight, freeze response. So I think with hindsight, I think I started the whole program of exercises a little bit too soon. And so that was referred to a second physio, and she was very much more relaxed about things. Oh, you don't have to do it quite so many times, and you can, just... And then I don't know, I can't remember if it was her or somebody else suggested mindfulness. And mindfulness just proved to be enormously helpful. I think, first of all, because it just allows you to feel what you feel without this constant fighting it. The whole resistance thing that I was experiencing. So there was a kind of, I suppose it allowed me just to say, okay, I'm experiencing this is not nice, but I'm okay, I can begin to manage this. And I mean, I think, our view of mindfulness is of, sitting on a mountaintop with eyes shut and all that. But in fact, I couldn't close my eyes for a long time when I meditated, but I could walk up and down the garden. And I would sometimes say to myself just a calming word like ease or kindness or something like this. And not that I was trying to force anything to happen, but it just seemed to open up a different space in my mind. So I got really interested in the mindfulness, and in fact went on to train as a mindfulness teacher. So that brought me in touch with a lot more about neuroplasticity. The vestibular rehabilitation is about neuroplasticity, of course, about opening up new pathways in the brain. And mindfulness is very much about this as well. And so I got very interested in how to approach problems in a different way, so as to recover a sense of connection, a sense of safety, a sense of trust. Later I was able to sit on my gym ball and just sort of stare out of the window at a birch tree, and begin to tune into the breathing. I think, like a lot of people, when they're very experiencing anxiety, you tighten up in the whole torso and you end up breathing just from the top part of the chest. And so mindfulness doesn't involve any deliberate changing of the way you breathe, but just by bringing a kind of kindly attention to the breath, it sort of gradually does change, I think. And I think that helped me a lot as well. So, I mean, I still have episodes of dizziness. And I still catastrophize sometimes, you know, and I still ruminate and think, oh, why were you such a stupid idiot? Why did you think if you did X, Y, or Z that you'd be okay to do, you know, and now it's going to be weeks and weeks before you get back to this point. I used to do a lot of that, and I still do a bit of that, but sometimes I have a fighting chance of catching myself at it and kind of with a certain amount of humor saying, it's okay, Claire, yeah, okay, you're doing a bit of that ruminating. Yeah, it might be worse tomorrow, but, you know, it might be a little bit better. You know, I sometimes deliberately say that to myself. Which reminds me that I often found that smiling, even when I didn't feel like it, was quite helpful. So like crossing Waterloo Station or going up and down escalators or whatever it was, if I smiled, it would cut off that panic bit of the brain and I could do it. So I think bringing a certain amount of humor to the situation has also proved helpful. That's I should probably open it up now if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you, Claire. I think can I just a quick show of hands from everybody that related to a lot of what Claire was saying. Yeah, frantically. So yeah, wow, it's so nice to hear people just talk about what it was like and that you're not alone. I'd love to open it up if anyone's got a question for Claire.
I can only see 9 people on my screen, so you might have to alert me if I don't spot somebody.
No, there are lots more people, Claire, and if anybody's got a question or comment to Claire, either you can put your hand up if that's easier. No, not that I can see. Kevin, I have to say, Claire, I think that possibly a future mindfulness session with Claire for all of us would be really helpful now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, Claire, I mean, it was very interesting, Claire, where again you touched on this point that the symptoms may remain and be consistent, but if we can train our mind to deal with it in a different way, it's incredible that you get just the same input, the same horrible sensations, but the result can be very different. It's fascinating to hear that, how it seems to be this ability to try and control how we respond, which to anyone who's a new member and you've 6 weeks or 6 months into this crazy condition might sound impossible, but it does come with time. And I'd love to find that part of this group is about how we accelerate that learning. So it'd be interesting probably to talk again with you, Claire, about how we can speed that learning up.
Oh, right. Well, but I think that's the nub, in a way, the nub of the problem, because I think probably at the beginning I was trying to tell myself, come on, Claire, you know, this is, you know, just to take a different attitude to this. So I think in a way, it's awful to say this, but you have to be quite patient, and it isn't in a nice upward curve. There'll be good times and bad times, and a lot of it is just about allowing things to be the way you find them just for now. I can remember saying this, but in this moment I am coping, you know, and letting go of maybe in the next moment I'm not coping, but you know, just in this moment I am coping, and then gradually you see some of these sort of things, like, as I say, the walking and under trees, the mindfulness, just to sort of get that parasympathetic nervous system going, the soothe system going. And then then you can start to work on your thought patterns. But yeah, at the beginning, there was only a very small amount of my conscious brain that I had access to. And I knew I had to work with that small bit. But, you know, in many ways, I just had to find some ways of feeling safe, I think, initially. Yeah,
it's fascinating. We've all been through that. I remember my early months, even early year, the only thoughts I had is my life's over. What did I do to deserve this? And things are just going to get worse. It looking back looks completely irrational, but apparently it's quite normal. And that, again, what we're trying to do is get the message out to people who are in that phase. Things are going to get better. It's hard to believe, but the biggest problem at the moment is your fear. And the message to everyone is do have hope, because we all get to a better place, guaranteed. Irrelevant of what your symptoms are and whether they stay with you for the rest of your life or not, we get to a better place. And it's terms of handling. One very quick story. I've had Meniere's now 18 years. I no longer have the violent attacks, but I still have moments where the balance is just gone. And I was out, it was only 4 weeks ago, I was walking around a marina quite near to the water's edge, and suddenly I couldn't walk. My balance was gone. Now, the interesting thing that if that had happened 18 years ago or even 10 years ago, it would have been a massive panic attack and almost sitting down on the spot or finding something to grab hold of. Instead, I didn't panic, and I just thought, how weird, this has come out of nowhere. And I stood still for about 30 seconds, then I slowly, and stood still for 30 seconds with no awareness of anyone else around me, it didn't matter, which is different to how it used to be. And then I slowly took one step after the other. Within 5 minutes, I was walking again normally and carried on enjoying my day. But if years before all this experience, that would have ruined my day, it would have been game over and going into another depression. So it just shows how we can change the way we deal with what's happening to us. It's brilliant. Any other questions out there, Kelly, or anyone else?
Yeah, we've got 3 questions that have popped up. Have we got time to do them now, or are we saving them for later?
I'll go do the first one for now.
Okay. So, Claire, the question is coming from Ian, and he's asked, have you identified the cause of your worst times? He says that he seems to keep trying to work out why he has a bad spell to then avoid kind of it again, but never seems to find a consistent reason.
All right. Well, yes, there are certain things for me that trigger it. You know, especially early on, it would be position of the head. So I think it's something to do with, you know, so that if I was up in the gods in a theatre or something like that, that would be extremely difficult. What other things trigger it? So, certainly for me, being on tube trains, very, very difficult. The rocking motion in tube trains. Travel generally is quite hard. Last time I really triggered it was the Queen's Jubilee. I stupidly watched, you know, all that evening sort of performance on TV with all the flashing lights and all the sort of, you know. So those are the sort of things that trigger it. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Claire. That's really helpful. Thank you. What we'll do, Rupal, have we got any more? Do you say we've got? I can't get my words out. Can you see any more hands for questions?
Yeah, there's a question from Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Claire, for your story. I just wanted to ask what kind of medical procedure preceded the start of this whole thing?
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, it was just an investigative procedure which necessitated a sedative called midazolam, and I suspect it may be the midazolam because I had had a previous briefer episode of dizziness after a general anaesthetic some years before that, which included midazolam as an ingredient. So it may be that I'm allergic to midazolam. Alternatively, it did knock me out pretty much. So they may have knocked my head around, or it could have just been a virus. You know, it's often difficult to know quite what sets these things off.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Kelly, shall we thank you so much, Claire, for sharing that with us. Now, I know we're going to go to our next person because, Kelly, they're on their lunch break at the moment.
They are indeed. So they're joining us in the nick of time. So Steve is our second guest speaker today. And Steve, I've got that you've got severe vestibular weakness and possible triple PD. Are you there, Steve?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Yes.
fabulous.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and I can see you. You're sat in your car.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
You're
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so hopefully it's working. So.
doing great.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So yeah, I've been struggling for 2.5 years now, and the diagnosis has been bilateral vestibular failure, PPPD, and oslopsia. So yes, that's been challenging. So yeah, for me, I mean, my journey started in January 2020, where I just noticed that I was when I was on the tennis. I'm a tennis coach, by the way. Sorry, yes, I'm a tennis coach. 51 years old. So my life is revolved around coordination, balance, movement, trying to be as fit as I can to chase a tennis ball and teach people how to play tennis. And I just noticed increasingly that I had moments of the court spinning round and everything moving, which would last maybe for between 10, 20, 30 seconds to begin with, and then got progressively sort of worse. But it might have happened once a day. It might have happened a couple of times a day. But obviously, like I'm hearing with other people, which is unbelievably encouraging to hear that it's not just me. You're not quite sure what's going on, and there's a real sort of worry and what is happening. So having gone to the doctor and then sort of been referred for various tests, I was able to get some advice on different exercises to try and do. But during that time, we obviously went into lockdown with COVID in the March of that year. So seeing the doctors and things was difficult because it became on Zoom. Yeah, so my journey throughout sort of the COVID lockdowns for the first 1.5 years was quite challenging, just to get information and sort of understand what was going on. And I think as things sort of got progressively worse, that was more and more of a struggle that I found. I mean, I've written down some of the sort of symptoms just because I don't know if anyone else feels how difficult it is to describe what you're feeling and what the what you're going through at various times. I found it really hard, even talking to the consultants. I couldn't put into words, or I kept trying to put into words how I was feeling, but found that quite difficult. So I've just jotted a few things down, which I just literally read through, and it might resonate with some people, but I'm constantly feel like I'm standing up in a rowing boat on the water or on a surfboard, that kind of thing. I feel like I'm constantly on a roller coaster. It's like we used to play a game as kids where you'd spin around 10 times and with your eyes shut, and then you'd open your eyes and have to run to the end of the garden and back, and you fall over, and it's that kind of feeling. Quite a heavy sort of feeling in the head of like my head's like a bucket of water that's got water in it, and it sways and it pulls you to one side, or like a force that's kind of pulling you when I'm walking or moving. My eyes feel like there's a delay in when they don't follow as quickly and be able to focus. Very much feel like I'm living my life through a body cam of a you see it on telly when a policeman's chasing someone or whatever, and there's this jolting around. I feel like that is my life is like that as I view things. Can't focus on road signs and or anything like that, or people that are coming to me. Yeah, feeling a bit sort of nauseous, seasick, travel sick. Very difficult when I'm traveling in a car, and Carol mentioned that, and that's a real struggle when I'm a passenger in a car, feeling like sort of jumping all over the place. Yeah, I mean, just feel like I'm falling, and all those kind of feelings of vertigo and things that I'm sure that well, what I believe other people are feeling as well, which I struggle ever so much in the dark. I fell over, just trying to go to the bathroom at night when it was dark. So we've had to get all these little lights that come on when I get out of bed. Really struggle with that. I've got no sense of where I am when it's dark, and even just going out at night is very difficult, just walking down the road. So that's kind of the symptoms. Obviously, the challenge of being a self-employed tennis coach and trying to still earn a living is very real. I've had to sort of contain what I do a little bit and who I teach. I can't keep up hitting the ball really hard with some really good players like I used to coach. Now I have to sort of tailor that a little bit and be a little bit more choosy with who I teach in terms of standard and speed of the ball. Luckily, at the moment, I can still coach, which I'm really, really pleased about, and I'm hoping that I can carry on doing that, because one of the things that the consultant has said is that kind of thing I'm doing every day, where I'm still focusing on a ball, that I find extremely difficult. But they said the more you can do that, or the longer you can keep doing that, the better. So I'm trying to maintain doing as much as I can work-wise, but it is exhausting. It's like playing, you know, I'm not a drinker, but it's like I can imagine having 20 pints and then trying to play tennis. It's exhausting trying to sort of stay not upright, but in my mind, stay upright and focused on the ball. And a challenge again that I found was that so many of my family, my wife, my friends were supportive, but I just kept feeling like this sense of they don't know what it's like. They can't know what it's like because they're not going through it. And it's a real frustration that you may even be able to sense it in me still, that it's hard living with it when those around you are very kind, but they don't know what it's like. And the classic of, well, you look fine, I do have a bit of a disparity at times where people say to me, "You're walking fine." My wife says to me, "No, you're walking. You're not veering off to the left or right." But I feel I am. When I walk the dog, I can't hold the dog on the lead particularly, because if she falls, then I feel like I'm going to fall. Or if I look to the left or right as I'm walking, I veer into the road or into a parked car or something. So there's a lot of emotions. I'm sure people. I hope people can understand that go with it, that are very difficult to understand. There's embarrassment, there's fear of what other people think. At work, because I'm a self-employed tennis coach, I try not to tell too many people. My boss knows, and a few of my trusted clients, but it's a difficult one because I try and hide it, because I don't want people to know, because I don't want them to not have a tennis lesson because they think I'm not able to do my job. So there's a battle within me that's like, I'm trying to hide it, I'm trying to compress it, and keep it so that people don't know, but I also want to tell everybody so that they can maybe give me a bit of slack if I do miss a tennis ball, or I do sort of look like I'm drunk. So that's kind of my journey where I'm at. I am still under the consultant at St George's Hospital in Tooting. I'm still seeing the neurophysio, which they're brilliant. They're very understanding, and it's nice just talking to them as well. But I'm getting the message really that there's not a lot that's going to happen, but we're just trying to manage where I'm at. I feel very blessed that I can still do that. I'm from the odd person I've heard on these chat, I'm quite new to the group, so I've only managed to get to one meeting and listen in, although I've looked on the videos. But it was just so reassuring to hear people, even Carol today there, just hear people and think, wow, yeah, I'm not on my own. Because it does get to you. I think it's, try not to get emotional, because it does get to you. I think it wears you down if you're not careful, because you feel so alone. So that's kind of my story, where I'm at, and I just really appreciate. I said to Kevin when he put the message out, I said I think it's time that I actually stop sitting back and just in this group and just be nice to sort of put myself forward a little bit to share my story, but hear other people's, rather than trying to hide from it.
I think that's really important, Steve. So thank you so much. I'm frantically nodding away, and I think lots of people have got questions and things to say to you. Can I just ask a really quick question? Because I was really interested when you were talking about being a passenger in the car. What were you like driving in the car? Is that somehow better?
Yeah, I mean, the consultant asked me this, and to be honest, I've pretty much stopped driving. I live literally about 500 yards from where I work, which is fantastic because it's a very quiet journey. So I do, like today, when I knew I have to sort of pop back home and I don't have much time, etc., then I will drive to work and back, because I feel like I can manage that. But anything else, I don't drive. I can't drive. It's definitely worse though as a passenger. But yeah, I don't like to risk. I used to do a lot of cycling as well, and what I struggle with is speed of things coming past me, so things flashing. So if I'm going through, when I was on my bike when it first started, and I was able to still cycle, and I just kind of thought I had these weird dizzy spells. It was things like going through trees where the sun's shining and the shadow flickers, and things like that. Or if I look down at, I had like a speedometer thing on my bike. If I looked down at that, then I would veer off. And I say basic balance things that I was used to being able to do without thinking. Obviously, living my life, and I used to cycle miles and miles, and I loved it. But I couldn't do that anymore without the fear of falling off the bike. So yeah, certain things trigger it, but passenger is definitely worse than driving. But I now sort of don't really drive, if I'm being truthful. My wife has takes on that now.
And I could see lots of hands up, and I can't see them now. Oh, there we go.
Got John's hand up, I can see currently.
John?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we can hear you, John. Have you got a question for?
Yeah, I've got
Steve?
a question for Steve. Yeah, exactly the same as Steve, very identical. All happened at the same time. I'm a year older than Steve. That's probably the only difference. Similar diagnosis. I just wanted to ask him a question. As he found out what caused it, because my only suspicion for myself is COVID. That's my question, really.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. They've tried to investigate that, but I've got to a point where they said it doesn't really matter because there was nothing obvious. I didn't have an infection that I'm aware of, or I wasn't ill. It literally just started. I did, strangely enough, have a brief episode similar when I was clearing out all the filing cabinet when we were bored in lockdown and couldn't go out. I found some notes of some similar kind of things. They thought it was labyrinthitis and that kind of thing back in 2004. But obviously, I don't remember that much about it but it obviously lasted enough time for me to go to the doctor and a consultant because I had some exercises that they'd given me. So whether there was anything, I hadn't had anything like that from 2004 or whenever it was till 2020. But they just said to me it could be a trauma. Then it's normally caused from a trauma, infection type thing, or they said very often it just happens and they don't know why. So they kind of stopped looking at why, because they said the reality is it doesn't make any difference to you other than maybe knowing, but it's not going to change where we're at. So but yeah, I did. And it's interesting you say about COVID, because I had all this and then I had COVID August last year, so just over a year ago, and I was really bad. I like a lot of people, probably had 10 days in bed, which is very unlike me, but felt really, really rough, and struggled. And there's no proof, but I do think it got worse. I think the PPPD shaking and everything for me got worse because that was in the August. It came to September, midway through September. My wife took me up to A&E because I said, I can't handle this anymore. This isn't right. And I was convincing myself, there was something else going on. So I literally went into A&E, which wasn't that helpful because I sat there for 10 hours, and then I told them the story, and they were like, well, there's nothing we can do. They tested obviously my heart and everything like that, but there was nothing. And then they sent me home and sort of said, contact the consultant again. But I do feel that it has potentially got worse from having had COVID quite badly last year. But I've got no proof on that either, because it's, I don't know if you may know what it's like. You kind of lose track a little bit of. I tried to journal things as I went on. The first doctor sort of said to me, try and write down, your days and how bad you feel certain days. But it got so long, it's you end up sort of forgetting where you are and when this happened and when that happened. But
Steve, thank you. Kelly, should we do one more question?
Yeah, I'm having a look through the chat, and we've got lots of comments about how it's very familiar to them, the story that you've kind of told us about, Steve. So you're definitely not on your own.
Kelly, can I just comment? Steve, you mentioned about the issue of hiding your problem, especially in the work environment. Just a bit of anecdotal stuff on that. I unbelievably was running my own business with my own employees when I went down with Meniere's, and I hid that from even people who work for me. Because a lot of people obviously say they hide it from employers because they're worried about being sacked or made redundant. So my problem then, and it's with hindsight now looking back, I was worried I would become identified as an ill person, that would be what I'd be known for, just being sick. And I suppose psychologically then, and I felt especially as a man being labelled as something wrong with him, not quite the right job. So I was worried about that, and it was such a shock because up until that stage I thought I was invincible, nothing would ever go wrong with me. The one thing I have found is I was totally wrong, and to share it and not be embarrassed and not fearful is totally the right thing to do. Doing it appropriately, obviously if you've got clients, you coach them with tennis, it could be just saying, by the way, if you see me ever walking a bit wobbly, it's because I've got this really bizarre condition, but don't worry, it doesn't affect my coaching. It can be done in that way. The reason it's good not to be hiding it is that's one less thing for you to worry about. And I think you'll be surprised, because I have been, how many people are positive about these things, and they're certainly not negative. So, but again, I have to say this to everyone, it's a bit like if you've ever been a smoker, don't tell people to stop smoking. They'll give up when they're ready to give up. And it's the same with all of us. We'll be ready to do these things when we're ready. But I would encourage.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Try. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. Nothing at all. And that's where you grow with time. You grow in confidence. That this is imagine if you'd just broken your arm, you wouldn't hide that. You'd have a badge of honor of the sling and the plaster. So, I've often said, if only we could walk around with bandages on our heads, it would make it so much easier for the rest of the world, but we can't. So it's just that area. Honestly, try it. I think you'll be surprised how generally positive it is.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steve. Look, if you've got, I know lots of people got questions, but I think we're going to move on. I'm just conscious we'll try and come back with questions at the end, if that's all right, Kelly. Shall we move on to our next speaker?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve, for giving up your lunch break to be with us. It's very much appreciated. So next up, we have got Sarah. So Sarah has, now my pronunciation of this may be really bad, so you might have to correct me, Sarah, but you have got ataxia type 2 with oscillopsia.
Correct, although I've had a new diagnosis. But
oh, yeah. You're collecting them all.
It's a bit like stamps, only far more interesting. So yeah, my name's Sarah, 50-something years old. You kind of forget after a certain area. And I'm just over 10 years into my journey. So it started off with my eyes flickering every now and again. That's how it started, quite simple. So I mentioned it to the optician, got sent to ophthalmology. I live in Leicester. From then it progressed to, and I describe things very simply for my brain to understand, Mr. Invisible pushing my shoulder every now and again, which made me veer off. Thank you very much, very helpful, Mr. Invisible, which then progressed to confusion. So I'd drive and pull up at the wrong house and wonder where I was and why was I doing there. From there, I worked at a place that had private healthcare. It's very helpful. Went to the neurology department, was given drugs, but they wanted to do genetic testing, which was something that the insurance wouldn't pay for. So I then moved on to the NHS and went through ophthalmology at Leicester for the eyes. They put me on some different drugs. But I had been diagnosed with episodic ataxia. Ataxia means I wobble. Episodic means now and again. So from there is a charity that offers a lot of advice, which I contacted, and they put me in touch with a hospital in London. From there, it was a whole big round of prodding and poking and testing and MRIs and watch my pencil waving in your face and walk up and down there and stand on one leg. You've been there, you know. Let me hit you with a hammer, etc., etc. All of that. That was done through the genetics department, through ophthalmology, through neurology, and I've written these down, through the GP, the optician. I've also been through Leicester Speech and Language and Leicester Physio. My current diagnosis is simply episodic ataxia. Interesting fact, ataxia in Greek means naughty child, or it's what they call naughty children. So that's what I describe my brain as. My brain is a naughty child. If I could put it in plaster and you could sign it, I would let you do it, but it's not. I have nystagmus, which means my eyes do their own dance all by themselves whenever they feel like it. I have oscillopsia, which means the world moves, but only I can see that and you can't. That's how I explain that to people. And also tremor. They're the official diagnoses. On top of that, I have earthquakes within my chin and my arms. My body decides to throw things and drop things very inappropriately, usually food, although I think that's because I carry food most of the time. Occasions I slur and stammer and forget my words. I wobble and get dizzy. I fall over. My head has a lot of pain and I have electrical feelings going through my body. It's all very interesting. Not very interesting when you go to your appointments. If you turn up and it's an episodic disorder, so you turn up and you're quite nice and walk very nicely up and down and your eyes stay nice and still. So I've been to many appointments that have not been great fun, where I've been kind of questioned and had extra pencil waving just to check that my eyes are not dancing, etc. The way I cope with it 10 years later on is I use the Greek word, naughty child. I talk to my brain, because that's where it stems from, as if it were a naughty child. And we were talking earlier about being a passenger of a car. So for example, if we stop at traffic lights and my brain believes we're still traveling at 40 miles an hour, even though I know we've stopped at traffic lights, I'll have a conversation with my brain in my head and say, you know, we have stopped, the car's not moving, the traffic lights are still where they are, so why do we want to continue on at 40 miles an hour? And those are the kind of conversations that I'll have regularly with my brain. I think for me, something that we were just talking about was acceptance. I don't fight it. I have what I have. I'm not going to fight it. We currently don't know where it's come from, but it wouldn't make any difference either way. It doesn't change what it is. Some days I can dance and paint and walk in straight lines and write beautiful writing. Some days I can lay on the sofa and jerk and spasm and not do anything very much. But it's still me. I'm both of those people. I'm all of those people. I'm not embarrassed of it. I'm happy to tell people, and I explain it in a way that I would to a child. I feel like I'm made of electric. Very often I'll touch my husband just to see if he gets an electric shock, because that's how it feels. So when your friends ask you things like, do you want to come to the Van Gogh experience? No, because that's what my world is like. Do you want to come to the cinema? Yes, but can we go to the audio descriptive, because I keep my eyes shut. Do you want to come out for a drink? Most definitely not. I don't have to pay for that kind of stuff. Everything that I used to love is now free. I don't love it, but it's free. So basically the good, now my body's able to tell me when I'm stressed or before I get stressed, because stress is one of my triggers. The things you don't think are stressful can be actually quite stressful. So my body will warn me, that's a bit stressful, you might want to stop. That's good. The bad, some of the appointments I've had where I've walked out of the door and sobbed because I felt nobody listened to me. We've all been there. The ugly are definitely some of the bruises that I get from falling over. We may have many of those. But the funny thing is, people's faces, when my eyes are dancing, you can tell that they've seen it, but they won't ask. Or if we're having a conversation and I decide to sit on the floor right then, because that's what I need to do to be able to cope or not fall over, and I'll carry on having the conversation while the world is rushing past at 400 miles an hour, it's their faces. Some people will ask, some people won't. If they do, I'll explain to them. If they don't, I don't. I just carry on. I am me. I have what I have. I don't fight it. I accept it. And that would be my advice to you, is to, if people ask, explain to them in a very simple way. Don't fight what you have, and stress less.
Love it. Sarah, I love your attitude. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think you should be, the first comedian to talk about balance issues. I think you would be brilliant at it, genuinely, because I think all of us were laughing because it was so true and it's affected all of us. What a great attitude to have.
That's the Christmas entertainment sorted.
Absolutely. A stint from Sarah.
That's it. Get that booked in, Kevin.
Yes. You booked.
Questions, thoughts for Sarah? Is it Sarah or Sarah? Sorry,
I am just both. People call me both of them.
No.
Did I see a hand? I think I saw a hand up somewhere. No, I've lost it again.
I've got a very quick question, Sarah. How long did it take to adopt that lovely approach and attitude you've got, or was it there from
No,
day
it
one?
was never there. I've been where, I think it was Steve was saying earlier how he was embarrassed by it and stressing out that everything that happened. I did that. I would probably say a good 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah, it does take time, doesn't it? It's overcoming the what the heck, what's going on, the grief, the anger, all the rest of it. And then slowly, if we're lucky, we start to emerge from it.
It's kind of like a realization for me that I can keep fighting something that neurologists don't understand, or I can accept it and live with it and manage it in my own way.
That's it, yeah. I know for me, I found looking at it was though I was completely drowned out by the condition. I faded away, and it was only when I slowly came back and then took over control from the condition, which is, I say, really hard to explain, but it's definitely a common thing. And the only other comment I got, it's quite interesting how all of us today, we mention this, it's about being heard. It's about people listening makes such a difference. It's crazy that we need that because we kind of know what's going on in our own bodies, but it's almost like we need this independent verification that we are not going mad. This is a thing, and it's quite normal the way we're responding. So it's brilliant. Thanks. Any other questions out there, Kelly, Rupal?
Nothing's come in so far unless I've missed anything. Ella, is that a hand up?
Yes. Well, first of all, I must say the last two speakers have been brilliant because I found it so difficult to talk about the condition.
I've got frozen on my side. Is anybody else?
Yeah, I think she's frozen.
Oh, we've lost her. Ella, come back.
That's how difficult it is to talk about the condition, even the
exactly. Well, hopefully she'll come back on and we can always come back to it with her question after we've... Oh, she's back. Hang on.
Yes. I said the hardest
Ella, we lost you.
Oh, you've lost me again.
Yes.
You're back now. We can hear you.
I'm back now. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think the hardest part for me is the triple PD, because it can suddenly appear, you know, just with, I don't know, a vehicle driving past or a person walking past, and it just seems to appear out of nowhere, and then I get wobbly. But the good news, Kevin, is that I am so much better now. And I think it's with listening to people on Life on the Level, and I realize I'm not alone. I mean, I'm finding I can walk better. I mean, I had so many awful falls and broke my arm and all sorts, but actually I'm functioning a lot better. And how I've done that
We may never know.
Yes.
Exactly.
We never know. I think
Dun, dun, dun.
It's now time for a commercial break.
Thank you, Ella. We will try and come back to you if you can
come
join
back,
us
yeah.
again a little bit
Yeah.
later on. But Sarah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Brilliant.
wonderful. And I think I am going to enter you into the Leicester Comedy Festival. I think really you should take it up because you are absolutely brilliant and hilarious. But you pick up and touch on everything that we have, all of us in some
Yeah.
shape or form, experienced, and I think you do it beautifully, so thank you. Kelly, shall we move on to our next speaker?
Absolutely. So thank you again, Sarah. So next up, we've got Richard. I believe he's currently posing as a Ricky on my screen. Ricky, you there?
Hello.
Fabulous. You're expecting me. That's good.
Yeah.
So Ricky has vestibular migraine, BPPV, and undiagnosed triple PD. Is that right?
Chronic migraine as well.
Oh, we'll just add in. You've got loads, unfortunately.
I got chronic basilar migraine, triple PD, and vestibular migraine.
Oh, you're just collecting them all, aren't you? Trying to go one up from Sarah, aren't you? Right, take it away, Ricky, then, with your story.
You sure you want to hear this?
Absolutely.
I'll go ahead and tell you if you want. I could write the book, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll just have the short version
I'll do
today,
the
and then we can do the
short
book
bit. I'll do the short
later.
bit. Yeah, I've always had a history of mental health issues. So I've always had bipolar, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, personality disorders as well. And I used to get these like fuzzy headaches when I was in my 20s, like twice a month. Really sort of dizzy, fuzzy head. And what happened in 2013, I moved out and I started to live on my own. And I started to get spells of derealization when I was outside, when I was walking. So I wasn't connected to like people passing and cars. So just getting really bad anxiety. And then in 2014, I met a girl who I fell in love with. She had schizophrenia. So we were going out for, well, 2 years. And it was going well. But in 2016, she came off the medication. And what happened in that last year, I couldn't actually tell you what I went through in that last year. She was cheating on me with multiple men. She was like driving and she was seeing faces coming out of the number plates of cars. So yeah, and I noticed around that time when I was going around shops and things, when I was walking, I would notice in crowds of people, I would get really dizzy. So I didn't know whether it was my anxiety, but especially like outside spaces, sort of really dizzy. And when I was sitting down like in a cafe, I would get like peripheral vision, like things were moving, spinning. So in 2016, I went on a flight to Spain and I had a massive panic attack on the flight. And I remember when the plane landed and we were driving back to the hotel, I was really like spaced out and dizzy. It was like everything was moving so fast, but my brain was trying to slow down. So that was in 2016. So that went on. My ex went to Spain with somebody that she didn't know, and she lived out there with somebody she didn't know, but I kept in touch with her, which I shouldn't have done. I should have just left the relationship as it was, but I kept in touch with her, and she was saying that she was having seizures and everything out there. So I kept in touch with her because I still loved her. So I wrote her a letter at the end of 2016. I put in the letter, I said, Gemma, if you keep doing all what you're doing, you're going to end up in the hospital, in the psychiatric unit. And it was 3 months later, she ended up being sectioned for 2 months. which was really hard to take because nobody told me that she was going to be sectioned. So I found out from my sister's friend that she had. So this continued 2017. So I was getting really run down at this point. I was working, I was doing sports, I was playing tennis, squash, jogging, weight training. And then 2017, I had my ears, irrigated, waxed for the first time in my life. So a load of wax came out of my ears, but I didn't look after my ears after the procedure. I was out doing gardening work the same day, and I should have put like cotton wool buds in my ears to protect my ears, but I didn't. So that progressed, and I was getting dizzy spells on the squash court. So I'd playing squash and the court would move, and my mates would say, "Are you okay?" I thought, there's just dizziness, it would just go, but it would continue. And I was diagnosed with BPPV. So that continued for like 6 months. Christmas 2017, I had a really bad chest infection. Put me in bed for 2.5 weeks. And I remember 2 weeks before the chest infection, I woke up one morning, and I never had it before. I had to actually hold on to all the walls in the house because the room was actually spinning. The kitchen was spinning. I was holding onto all the walls. I went outside. I was sick 3 times. But me being me, I drove straight to my parents' house straight after it. But luckily, they only live 15 minutes down the road. And they said, just sit down. It's just your anxiety. But really, I should have gone to hospital at the time. So that progressed to 2018. I saw a CBT therapist, an ENT doctor in 2018, diagnosed with vestibular migraine and put on Topamax. And then 2019, I was basically bedridden for 6 months, only going out for like 10-minute walks 3 times a day with the dog. I was getting migraines 4 times a week behind the eye, where I couldn't move for like 8 to 9 hours a day. And at this stage, I had a neighbor living next door who was harassing me at the time. And this was going on for 2 years, and the council and the police were involved as well.
Ricky, can I just ask you how you are now? Sorry, I just wanted to find out a little bit more about your condition now. How are you now, sort of physically? How do you cope with it?
How do I cope with it? I take a Jovi injection once a month, propanolol. I'm on 5 medications. So yeah, it was just with a neurologist, ENT. I got social workers, support workers, vestibular rehab therapists. But yeah, it was just 2018, 2019. This neighbour was harassing me. He had an NASB order, noise abatement order notice. The police must have...
There's been obviously
lots of stuff going on. Yeah.
Lots going on in your life that's affected it. What are some of the positives, would you say, Ricky, about how you have learned to cope with your conditions?
How have I managed to cope? I've had all the tests, the MRIs and the VNG testing. I don't know, I just learned to adapt, really. And I've just been diagnosed 6 months ago with autistic spectrum disorder as well. So it's just learning to adapt, and I think the medication is helping as well. But yeah, it just got to the stage where when I wasn't leaving the house, my old doctor was so worried about me. He went on a walk with me. So he said, "Richard, we'll go out for a walk." So
Are you able to go out for walks now?
I can walk now, yeah, but I'm still, I get all the symptoms that everybody else has been saying, the dizziness. But I find that walking like under trees, where I walk up the forest, that's a lot easier with my dog. But I got, there's always some sort of head pressure or head pain. I've started in the last year going to cafes and sitting outside cafes. But even doing that for like 50 minutes to an hour is just really hard. And the other thing which is really hard is when I'm walking and I've got to chat to 2 or more people at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on my balance so much. But I use my dog, the lead and the dog, as a sort of balance mechanism.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. I've done that. I've done that too. Borrowed my best friend's dogs to kind of help me walk straighter because they pull you along, and it's fantastic. Ricky, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Has anybody got any thoughts, any advice, perhaps even for Ricky that you could share right now? Kelly, is there anything on?
Nothing's come in so far. I think from listening to Ricky's story, I think one of the things that I would say to him is that it's all kind of relative in terms of challenges that you face. So some people might be able to do a lot more than perhaps you can at the now, but that's okay. It's just what's kind of relevant to you, and it's about breaking things down and doing it step by step, and that's how you're going to keep going forward. In terms of, you said you couldn't walk, but now you are able to go out more and go out with the dog and to cafes. And it might be just a case of do it for 5 minutes, see how you get on, then push it the next time when you feel comfortable to 10 minutes and 15, and build it up kind of gradually. That's something that I know works for me with my balance condition, and you build your endurance that way, and it can have a big difference, both obviously physically but also on your mental health, which is so important for yourself, Ricky.
Yeah, like I walk about an hour and a half a day with the dog over 3 months. But what it is, I have atypical personality. So I was a decent tennis player when I was younger, and I was a squash player as well, jogging, weight training and everything. But I lost my job as a website developer. So I couldn't do that. Yeah, and I've just lost a lot of friends and a lot of contacts,
Well, look,
it's very
Ricky,
difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got friends here. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're
thank
doing
you so
it.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Ricky. And please look, this is part of what this group is about, is kind of helping each other and supporting each other, and
Absolutely.
the balance buddies, and these meetings I think are just so important, where we're all sharing our stories with each other and advice as well. Thank you, Ricky. Kelly, we're going to move on to our next speaker. If that's all right.
So our next guest speaker today is Nicola. Nicola has MDDS and gluten ataxia. Now, Nicola, might not be just myself that doesn't know, but what does MDDS stand for?
So it's mild development syndrome.
Fabulous. I've heard of that one.
Yeah. I've also got cervical dystonia.
Okay.
Which gives me a head tremor, which with my balance condition makes the dizziness much worse with a head tremor. It's the first time I've really spoken on the group. I've joined last year, but I've called sit in the background kind of thing. So I thought this time round I probably should share my story. And like everyone's spoken today, I can get so many symptoms and feelings that they've had, and I can just so relate to them. Mine really started back in 2017. 2015, actually, I had 3-week episode of what my GP thought was labyrinthitis. I'd spent a week down in London, going in daily on the tube to do a course with work. And then I had about 3 weeks where it felt like I was walking on a trampoline and didn't really know what was happening and stuff. So the GP just diagnosed labyrinthitis, didn't think anything of it once it had settled, tried several different meds. And then I went back to work. I used to work as a nurse. And then in 2016, I then gave up my job and went to work in Africa. Went to volunteer, working basically as a practice nurse with a load of orphan children. And while I was out there, I was other than my head tremor, I was completely fine. Came home for a wedding back to the UK. And then within hours of flying back to South Africa, I completely lost my balance. I didn't really know what was going on. I would be walking along the floor and the floor would feel like it just fell away from me. I had to hold on to walls. I couldn't stand up properly. I didn't have any nausea with it or sickness, but it just felt very, very unsteady. Ended up going to see a GP, an ENT consultant and a neurologist in South Africa. That was a different experience altogether. And they didn't really know what was going on. So after 6 weeks, I was then given some funding to fly back. I had to fly back business class because I couldn't sit up in the chair on the plane. I had to lay down on the flight home. I saw a balance specialist up in Sheffield when I came home. They then diagnosed Mayer-Barton syndrome, but he didn't know if there was something else going on. So I was then sent to the neurology in Sheffield Hospital. They then diagnosed, after several MRIs and various different tests, they diagnosed gluten ataxia. At that point, I was pretty much bedbound. If I went anywhere, I had to use a wheelchair. Most of the time I was sleeping. I had this rocking sensation that I felt like I was on a boat, and I had that constantly for the next 10 months. It was just so exhausting. And the only relief I got from it was if I was in a moving vehicle, when the vehicle was actually moving, not when it stopped, or if I was lying down. And I went through some exercises. I did eventually get referred to the neurophysio for the NHS. They then eventually got me walking again. After about a year of physio, I was then walking again with a walking stick. Starting to get better, which was really, really good. And then lockdown happened. I then gradually reduced my mobility. My muscles started to get tired again. My rocking sensation came back. It was just so difficult being at home, not knowing what was going on, with everyone else being stressed in the world and stuff. That's when I then decided to contact Professor Ray in Leicester. Had several balance tests done and then got the diagnosis of vestibulopathy and triple PD. Went through some vestibular physio, which was amazing. Managed to get myself walking again, and this year, up till August, I actually managed to spend time walking without my walking stick. I was managing to go into B&Q and go shopping without my walking stick, which was really, really good. And I had some days where I was actually feeling like I was back to normal. And then I decided in August I would go and see ABBA in London. I went on the train. I then went on the train again to see the Queen laying in state at Westminster Abbey. And I've been rocking ever since. I'm back on the boat. It just feels like it's one thing after another. And obviously throughout this time I've had to give up my nursing. So I'm kind of on disability benefits at the moment. But I thought because I was going so well, I then decided to join college. I'm just doing college 1 day a week, starting a counselling course. So I'm going to see if maybe counselling could be something that I could start doing as a job. I'm only in my early 40s and I've still got another 30 odd years of working left to go. So I need to try and do something other than just sitting at home all day. I'm hoping and praying that this bout of rocking won't last 10 months. But at the moment, it's just a case of trying different things. I'm trying acupuncture for the first time this week, just to see how that goes. And apparently that's good for relaxing my nervous system, because my nervous system is very exaggerated at the moment. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicola. I noticed that Michaela's on. Michaela, do you know much about MDDS? I don't mean, and kind of bouts of it and how it works, because I genuinely don't.
It is a very difficult one. Potentially there's a bit of overlap with migraine.
Yeah.
The Mander-Barton syndrome, it's starts when people travel. So they go on the boat and then they come off the boat, and that feeling of being on the boat just remains. So we've all experienced it where we go on a journey and we come back, and there's sort of the half day or so where you're walking around going, thinking, oh, I've still got my sea legs, this all feels a bit weird, but it settles. With MDDS, it doesn't seem to settle. So it is a very difficult one. We don't tend to see a great deal of it in the balance clinic. But yeah.
Rupal, Michaela, there'll be lots of new members who don't know who you are, Michaela. So if you could just quickly explain what you do.
All sorts. So I'm Michaela Burton. I work part-time in the NHS at Leicester Royal Infirmary in the Balance Centre doing vestibular physiotherapy. I'm an audiologist by background, but specialise in all things balance, essentially. Many of you will know me from the London Road Clinic doing the diagnostic testing there. So I'm very sorry for all of you that I've tested, but I try to be nice when I'm doing it. And I'm also the balance lady, so doing vestibular rehab on a private basis as well. Included in that, I also do some clinical hypnotherapy if wanted or needed. I do some NLP work, which is neuro-linguistic programming, so where we look at kind of language and how that affects sort of how we see things and how we therefore respond to things.
Yeah.
So yeah, all good.
Just an aside there for me, Rupal, just for 1 minute. A lot of members, especially the new members I talk to, there is this consistent problem of either getting to see someone on the NHS within a year or two, and then fighting to eventually get some form of diagnosis, and then trying to get any appropriate rehab treatments, etc., etc. Now, as Michaela said, she is part and parcel of the NHS system, but also offers access on a private level, which is paid for. Now, our group's job is not to advocate people should pay for treatment, but we'd just love to point out there is that route, because some people don't even know it exists, that you can access, such as yourself, Michaela, privately. And it can be a godsend if you're able to speed up that access and get more knowledge from such as Michaela. So if it's okay with you, Michaela, I'm going to put your website on the chat for people to be aware of. As I say, we know in an ideal world, the NHS would have amazing resources and we'd all get seen, but it's just not happening. And as someone I know, my youngest son is now a junior doctor, and he said, NHS is brilliant. If you've got a terminal illness, you can't be anywhere better. Serious health, life-threatening conditions. So, but if it's not life-threatening, get to the back of a very long queue. So that sadly is where we're at. So I will put your details up, Michaela, and I'd stress to anyone, if you can afford it, it's sometimes not as expensive as you might think to get some words of wisdom, and it could save you months, if not years, of anguish. It's bad enough living with these conditions, but not to know what they are, it just heaps misery upon misery. So thanks, Michaela, and I'll shut up and put your website on the chat. Thank you.
I'd just be curious to see if anyone's got any advice as well for Nicola. If there is anyone
Can I ask Nicola a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
From one Nicola to another.
Hello, Nicola. I was diagnosed with triple PD and I had BPPV 2017. But I'm also starting to question if I've got MDDS. And the reason I ask that is if I can't go on boats, if I do boats or train journeys or planes, or if I travel in a car, we have to look at winding roads if it's not a motorway, because when I stop and get out, and it's like you say, everyone else okay, but for days or weeks I am on a boat. And the more I attend this group and the more I listen to people, I really am starting to think that have I got this MDDS as well as the triple PD, because there's nothing, I'll do the head exercises like you're saying, there's nothing that will take it down. Eventually it does, it settles. Well, I remember when I spoke to Professor Ray, when I was diagnosed with the triple PD, I remember him asking me about when I was a child if I suffered with travel sickness, which I did. I was always, if I was in the back of the car, I was always very sick with sickness. Was that something that you had? Do you remember as a child of traveling? Were you?
Most of the time in the car I'm okay unless I'm reading. If I'm reading, then I get really bad seasick.
Yeah. Got to look at the horizon point all the time. Yeah.
But actually, I've been to see Professor Ray this week because of my relapse, and he seemed to think that I've got a combination of the both and possibly my migraine.
Yeah. I had migraine last night. I'm starting to really think what you've got. I think I've not been as severe as you, like you say, where you couldn't walk, but everything you're saying is very, very similar. Like you say, I can't work with my head down. Everything I have to have a laptop on a stand. Everything's got to be at a horizon point. The travel is huge. It's completely up to change my life. Like you say, if you go away or go on holiday, it's all planning around what the distance is, what kind of travel it's going to be, because I know just to go from here to travel to somewhere like Norfolk for a holiday, I know 3 or 4 days I'm going to be feeling like I'm still rocking in the car.
I mean, the one good thing that I get with the MDDS is the fact that I'm okay when I'm driving.
Yes, I am.
Rocking goes away completely.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
And so I think it's mainly for me tiredness that affects everything the most. When you're more tired, you're more rocking,
more dizzy,
more dizzy, you're more off balanced. I also have problems with nights. When it's dark, I lose my balance a lot more, and things like that. But I would go and see her.
Go and see Michaela.
I don't think, you can go and see Michaela. Yes. Yeah. I would definitely recommend going to see Michaela. I have had the balance testing done, and it did actually give me some kind of hope that there would be, because the first consultant I saw basically said, you've got this condition and you probably won't get better. Live with it, kind of thing. And then I went to see the guys at London Road Clinic, and it gave me a bit of hope that actually I could get better.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth it if you can afford it.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Thank you, Pam. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you both, Nicholas. And it just makes me think of Kimberly Warner as well. I think she's been one of our speakers in the past, who has MDDS as well. If you look her up, Unfixed Media on YouTube and other social media platforms, she's made lots of really great videos on different conditions, people with different conditions. And in fact, Kevin, I think one of our previous videos is her doing a talk about MDDS. If I remember right.
It's on our website, Ruth, under meeting reports. You can see Kimberly. I'll put the website on the chat as well.
Brilliant. Kelly? Thank you, Nicola, by the way. Kelly?
Hiya, thank you. We've got no questions coming in at the moment, but I just wanted to say, Nicola, like when I was listening to your story, I found it really interesting because even though you've had challenges and you're kind of responding to a challenge that you've had more recently now, you've not let your attitude seems to have been you've not let that stop you from doing it. Like the fact that you managed to go and see the Queen lying in state is incredible. Like that's a lot of people perhaps wouldn't have had the courage to do that because of obviously the length of queue. You know, my husband thought I was absolutely all sorts for getting on my backpack, getting down to London on the train on my own to go and do that with my condition. So it's good to know that there are other people out there that are trying to push forward. And, you know, I really hope that the side effects you're feeling now go away or settle as much as they can soon.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about having that kindness to yourself as well. Like I think somebody said they constantly kept pushing themselves. And I'm one of those kind of people that keep pushing myself and sort of saying, you've got to get yourself together and keep going. But I've been having counselling alongside all my other therapists, and she's been teaching me how to be kind to myself.
Yeah.
And making sure I put rest periods in.
Absolutely. It's not striking that balance, isn't it?
The trip to London was have a rest period before, take a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So that I wasn't too tired, and then have a rest day afterwards, and that's how I coped with it.
Amazing.
So yeah,
brilliant.
Have we got one more speaker possibly?
I've got potentially we've got. Is there somebody called Faye on? I can't see anybody. Faye, are you there?
Faye, speak now.
No.
No, Faye's not here.
Well, we're just going to be left on this cliffhanger of what Faye was going to tell us from her story.
We'll get her on next time.
Exactly.
I think there's a couple of. I think there's possibly one or two comments, Kelly, on the chat.
Yeah, there's been various comments coming in throughout this afternoon, which has been lovely to see. There's been suggestions about the Migraine Buddy app. I think Naomi suggested that for one of our members. It's not something I've heard of, but apparently it can collect data after each attack that you input, and it gives you a monthly report to help identify personal triggers and trends. So that might be something people might want to look into. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, there's a tip about cycling from, I think it was it Steve that spoke about cycling?
Yeah.
And they spoke, the tip that's come through is that somebody else used to be a keen cyclist. And a little over a year ago, they switched to a recumbent trike. I personally don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. And that apparently made it easier with the cycling. And they were able to spend 5 weeks during the summer cycling around the Netherlands and managed to complete over 1,000 miles, which is just incredible. So might be worth getting yourself a trike if you fancy that.
I think there's a message from Claire as well about having VM and getting on boats towards the bottom.
Oh, okay, hang on, I'm scrolling.
Okay.
Just truthful, while Kelly's looking at that, just to throw out to everyone, we mentioned an app about recording events, and one of our speakers mentioned earlier today about monitoring everything that was ever happening, and I've got conflicted views on this. I went through the usual thing. The early years, I was recording everything and looking desperately for a pattern and a clue as to why my attacks came. Was it what I was eating, drinking, sleeping? Was I walking, not walking enough? And for me, anyway, I came to the conclusion all I was doing was reinforcing every day I'd got something wrong with me. And it served no purpose. And I never found an answer. I don't think there is one. I think our bodies are so complicated that, you know, so many different things, what you eat, what you drink, what time you get up, are you stressed, that it's impossible to work out these trends. And I think even if you did, I'm not sure they'd be of any use to you. So I'm just throwing that out to everyone, whether is it worth doing or not. Some people might say with a condition, yeah, it's brilliant, I now know when I'm at risk. But for me personally, what a waste of time. And I chained myself to this vigilance every day instead of getting on with my life. So
it's
just
good
a
to get an
thought.
alternative perspective though, isn't it? Because like you say, everybody's different. There's some people it might work really well and they want that information, and like for yourself, Kevin, it was detrimental to you. So
Yeah.
it's good to get kind of both sides, isn't it, of the coin, to say the least.
Kelly, did you
I
find
found the comment, Rupal, I think from Claire. Was that the one you were mentioning?
Yeah.
It seems about transport. Transport seems to have been a key thing across the board in all the presentations I noticed today, in terms of like one of the biggest challenges that we all kind of face. And she had problems with boats, planes, and yeah, a wobbly chair, never a good thing if you end up just being stuck on one of those. But traveling in a mobility scooter is her tip. So it's something to think about.
Yeah.
And then Ronan, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah.
Have you got a question that you want to throw out to all of us?
Not a question, but a comment. It was interesting interesting to listen to Michaela there, and she mentioned the language we use to ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves. And I was told about that about a year ago, and I found it very hard to translate it into practical use. But one day I was out walking and I felt a wave coming on, a dizziness. And when I do that, I kind of think, oh, it's going to get worse. I better run indoors. And it gets worse. And then I do get home and lie down. And it goes away after a while. But I found another way of coping with it now. When I'm out walking and I do feel a wave of dizziness coming on, I say to myself, this is just a wave. It'll pass over in about 30 seconds. And it does. Like I say, it's the things we tell us, the way we talk to ourselves about our experiences. And give another example. I have a name for dizziness now, my dizziness. I call it Mr. Woozy. And I'm going out for a walk now. Instead of getting anxious and kind of projecting forward, I say, let's go for a walk, Mr. Woozy. The humor helps as well. That's it. Thanks very much.
That's great. I love that. Mr.
Brilliant. We've had some book suggestions from
I saw them come through.
Kelly.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of book suggestions. One is by Alan Gordon, I believe, called The Way Out. And that can be very helpful, apparently, for pain and helping to calm the brain. And there's also that word of neuroplasticity came up again for that one. And then there's also Unlearn Migraine. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce who wrote it, but it's in the chat, folks, and you can read it at your own leisure.
Sandra, how do you pronounce the author's name?
Yeah, I'll leave it with you, Sandra.
Migraine. Unmute yourself briefly, Sandra, and just tell us the name of the author. Just out of
well, I think I would have difficulty with his name as well. Well, that's The Way Out.
That's right.
This is him.
Yeah. By them people.
It's Goycochea. He's a neurologist, a Spanish neurologist. It's very much to do with neuroplasticity, and he's very right on about you can change the brain. It takes a lot of work and commitment, but keep at it. And I think hearing people here today reading books that are positive and say, look, there is a way. It is work, and you do have to keep at it, not in a overzealous way, but in a calm, loving kindness way to yourself. Pain reprocessing is a bit that Alan Gordon's done, and it's based on now clinical research that was done in Boulder, Colorado, and people have been helped immensely with that. It's about sort of staying with the pain, noticing it, describing it to yourself, and I found even doing that helped because it was being mindful. It took my mind off my dizziness and the pain, and actually finding words for how I was feeling. It kind of got me into a different mode. I wasn't so at the prey of what was going on. I was sort of it's very much about being with the pain, acceptance, finding words for it, and a lot of self-acceptance. And it does, and when the brain is doing it, there's a lot said about the brain. Pain is only the brain's opinion. That's always a rather hard thing to say. But it's the brain. When you've got a sore neck, a sore elbow, it's not in the elbow. It's the pain that decides how much, how often, how long. Because anything chronic, the brain has got rather too good at giving out this message, which it thinks is helping you, but actually it's getting too good at help that you don't need anymore. So it's about calming the brain. So it's only the brain's opinion. It's not the truth. There's nothing wrong with your elbow or arm or the head. It's become chronic. The brain is doing it. It's the brain that's doing it. And you know, with migraine and things like that, there isn't anything wrong with your brain or your eyes or your ears, mostly. It's the brain has decided that it's trying to protect you by, you know, giving out all these alarms and continuing it in a sort of loop. So I found his book, in fact, there was a reading of the book on Zoom a while back, which I took part in, where some of his therapists talked us through the book chapter by chapter. And it's really good. And certainly Joey Remini's book, Rocksteady, is also very good. Any of these.
Thank you,
it's about
Sandra.
you know, and this thing about neuroplasticity. Even GPs are talking about neuroplasticity for chronic diseases now. You know,
Thank you very much, Sandra. I'm just aware that we've got Claire waiting as well. Hi, Claire.
Oh yes, I'm just following on from what Sandra's saying about the neuroplasticity, and also what Rowan was saying about, you know, the stories we tell ourselves. Two things really. One, that I would highly recommend the Breathworks mindfulness course, Mindfulness for Health, which is very much what you were talking about, Sandra, sort of ways in which we can work with this neuroplasticity. And the other thing I wanted to say was something that Nicola said, which was that, you know, one medic that she saw said to her, "This will get worse." And I also have arthritis, and I remember there was one consultant said to me, "Oh, you've got this degenerative condition, and soon, you know, you'll be bent double," and blah, blah. And then I moved to another consultant, and she was very, very much more upbeat. "No, this is fine, you know, you're managing really well." So it's what I want to say is sometimes the stories that the medics tell us can also be a bit too powerful. Not to say that they're not helpful and they're not true, a lot of things they say, but sometimes the way that they say it or the emphasis they put on it can over catastrophize what's happening to us. And I definitely I had that experience more with the arthritis than the vestibular problem, but yeah, I've gradually come to realize that sometimes I need to sit light to what somebody else is saying about my condition too, you know, not that I don't take it on board, but that the kind of emotional baggage that might go with it, I don't necessarily have to take on board as well.
Thank you, Claire. Just one final one, I think, for now, Kevin. And this is a quote. Can you see it, Kelly?
The quote that apparently is from our own website.
Yeah.
I know. I think it's a really fitting way to round off such a lovely session today. So yeah, so somebody's helpfully found it out from our own website, and apparently when it's something that they use when things are really, really bad, but they find it to help them get through, is "You've got through every bad day so far." So on that note, Kevin, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, no, excellent. And thank you, all the members that have shared their stories today. I'm always struck with how eloquent, how well people explain these balance conditions. And as one said, it's not the easiest condition to try and communicate to people, but I guess it helps our audience. We know what you're talking about, but it's so great. And the thing to realize, everyone who shares this, there will be hundreds, if not thousands of people that go on to watch the video of this over the years, and it really will help people to understand. As we've seen today, another common message, it's thank God I know I'm not on my own. It is so lovely to realise you are not on your own. And to all those out there, you know, never be on your own. Just don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, other members, Balance Buddies, because that's what we're here for. But it's been a brilliant session. 2 things to mention. I've put it on the chat anyway. The chat text will be emailed to all members in a couple of days when the video is ready. So don't be desperately scribbling down websites and books. You're going to get a copy of it. And put this in your diary. Saturday, December the 10th is the Christmas special group meeting, where you all have to wear silly Christmas jumpers or hats. And importantly, we will have a panel of who's who, experts in balance, who are going to be there to tell us how to get the best out of Christmas and how to look forward to a brilliant new year. But thanks everyone for taking part. Thanks Rupal, Kelly, brilliant job again today. Just really glad to see it all happening. So thanks everyone. Take care for the next few months, and we'll see you in December. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye-bye. Bye-bye.